Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions podcast. And today we have an amazing guest for this today's episode. It's Mr. Ed Johnson. Welcome, Ed. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm very well, thanks, Andrew. It's good to be on the show.
Yes, and no, exactly. We've been talking about this for quite a while, and now I finally managed to snare some time with you, and get you on the show. So glad you're here. So yeah, to help the audience understand where me and Ed met, actually, because and Ed will explain a little bit about what he does in a minute, I'm sure. Quite a while ago, actually, I was in London, and I'd been invited to what's called a pitch night. So a startup pitch night where all these funky companies with funky brands stand on stage, and the founders explain what their story is, and then they have a panel of experts. So I arrived late, not that I arrive late to most things, but sometimes, and came in, and there was this other gentleman on stage, and he finished his pitch, and I think he had about 6 or 7 minutes, and it was about 3 minutes through, and then he got savaged by the expert panel. So I thought, oh God, I'm here. I better go and get a beer or get a drink, because this is going to be a long night. And then who should come up? There's this guy who jumps up. This is introducing Ed Johnson. And Ed did his pitch, and everybody's like a standing ovation at the end, and the expert panel loved him, and he actually won the pitch night. So I thought, God, I've got to know a bit more about this. So we obviously started to have a chat, and then here he is today. So there you go. It's amazing what can happen. So welcome to the show, Ed. What do you do then? What gets you up in the morning? What's happening in Ed Johnson's world today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, thank you for that, Andrew. So PushFar really is what gets me going in the morning. So that's the company that we set up. And I've set it up just over 2.5 years ago now. And the aim of PushFar really is to make mentoring more accessible and effective for everyone. So for individuals, getting more individuals involved with mentoring and helping to raise awareness about just how beneficial and important it is, both as mentors and mentees. And then for organizations, helping them to streamline mentoring schemes for their employees. So that's what gets me up in the morning, and has done for the last 2.5 years, often early in the morning as well.
Really? What's the earliest time you've been up in the morning then?
Well, at the moment, I've got into a habit of getting up at about 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning.
Have you? Yeah. Good on you.
Which I enjoy, because
you've been reading Robin Sharma then, 5 a.m. Club, have you?
I haven't, but maybe I should. I love getting up at that time and just powering on through work when the emails aren't coming through, and where I've got time to focus and get things done. And actually in the summer as well, it's great going running at that time in the morning, particularly in London. So I'll either go straight into the office at 4:30 or 5, or I'll go for a run. And it's a great way to start.
That's good. I'm proud of you. That's good. I mean, are you burning the candle at the other end as well, and working late at night as well? Or
I try not to. I mean, there are some evenings where I'll be working. I mean, the latest I'll work in the evenings is usually 6. That's kind of my cutoff.
Oh, okay.
Occasionally I'll have a demo in the US with a prospective client at sort of 7, but that's few and far between. And then if I'm not doing anything, seeing friends or anything, which obviously we're all doing less of at the moment with the current pandemic, but if I'm not doing that, then I'm usually in bed by about 9:30 or 10 o'clock. So yeah, I'd like to think I've got a good balance on that.
That's good. So I mean, you mentioned about PushFar, but you are what's your role at PushFar? What do you do there?
Co-founder and CEO. So,
okay.
And as a startup, that means pretty much everything.
So you're like the business founder of PushFar. Is that what you describe? Because usually I have a tech founder or a technical founder and a business founder. So you're the business founder. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So my co-founders are technical.
Okay.
So he's our tech guy, and Gabriel, who's my co-founder, I've worked with on various projects over the last sort of 5 years or so, and I approached him with the idea of PushFar. As I say, 2.5 years ago now, and said, look, I've got this idea. Do you think you might want to join me on this? And before I knew it, he'd quit his job, and I realized I needed to find investors pretty quickly to pay for the salary.
Okay.
from the job he quit. So he didn't give me much notice that he was leaving his previous company to join me.
You obviously did a good sales job on him,
which put the pressure on me to then find investors to actually pay his salary.
Right. So I suppose a question about that, because obviously it sounds. I mean, I suppose my question when you were just doing your introduction was, what was the trigger for that? What's the origin story? Because obviously I've met lots of founders. I've been a founder myself. I've been a co-founder of companies in Silicon Valley, etc., etc. So what was the kind of the epiphany moment, and what was the problem that you saw, and how did you experience that personally? How did that make you passionate about solving this problem?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was the fact that there was a pain problem in trying to find a mentor. I was looking for a mentor to help support me in my career. I was head of digital for another startup prior to setting up PushFar, and I was sort of looking for the next step in my career, and I realized I needed a mentor. I needed someone with experience to offer support. And then quickly realized that actually finding a mentor is not that easy. You can network with people, you can ask around, you can ask your contacts and the LinkedIn network if they know someone who might be a good mentor. But at the end of the day, it can be difficult to find the right person. You don't necessarily know if the people that you're contacting are willing to be mentors or have the right experience. So there was that pain point there. And I was sort of almost expecting there to be some sort of a platform out there already, and there didn't seem to be anything. So started to map out the idea for PushFar as a concept of bringing mentors and mentees together. At that stage, not really knowing what the business model behind it would be, but just knowing that there was an opportunity and there was a need for it, and that I couldn't be the only person out there who wanted to find a mentor. And as I started to research it, I realized that organizations typically offer mentoring schemes to their employees, but there was a massive problem in that logistically running a mentoring scheme was a nightmare. So HR directors and learning and development managers that offer mentoring schemes typically do so with Excel spreadsheets and a lot of email chains back and forth, and the matching process is a bit of a nightmare, and then managing and reporting on it's a nightmare too.
See, Bill Gates has got a lot to answer for.
Why is that?
Well, because he created Excel, didn't he? He created, Microsoft Exchange and Microsoft, Office 365. So people, they set up systems and workflows, using Office tools, but it's not scalable, is it? It's not sustainable.
Exactly. And whilst it's a good thing that companies are offering mentoring, actually logistically it just becomes impossible when you're talking about matching anything more than say 100 employees. Anything more than 50, it's hard work. And so that became our business model. So we
interesting
started to develop it.
So obviously thanks for sharing the kind of origin story of PushFar, but what's the story behind, what's been your growth journey since the time before PushFar? Because obviously there was life before PushFar, and I presume there will be life after PushFar, but obviously I think you're pretty busy with PushFar at the moment. But so what was, could you explain to the audience a bit about your background and your journey to the point you got to that size? Because I know you've got quite an interesting background. You've been through quite an interesting journey already with what you've done.
Yeah, absolutely. So I dropped out of school when I was 17. I realized pretty early on that I didn't want to go to university and I wanted to get into the working world as soon as possible. I've always been interested in technology and digital marketing and things. So I taught myself to design websites and code when I was quite young at school. And then whilst I should have been doing schoolwork, I was doing freelance web design for local businesses.
Really?
So that's where my entrepreneurial journey started, was at school. And then at the age of 17, I tweeted the CEO of a digital marketing agency and asked whether there were any internships or jobs. He came back pretty quickly saying, let's meet for a drink and we can talk about your experience. So we did. And then 2 days later, he said, what are your salary expectations? I don't think I know he didn't realize that I was 17 at the time. Before I knew it, I was moving to London and starting my first job. So that was age 17, and then from there worked at a company called Responses, which was then acquired by Oracle. So moved into Oracle. for 6 months. And then from there moved to working for a data science consultancy in London. And then a company called Zoopla.
Zoopla, yeah, okay. Yeah.
And was doing digital marketing there. And
I was talking to one of the ex-Zoopla guys today, actually. You might know him, but we'll talk about that later, yeah. But
they've all moved across to Kazoo, which is
okay.
Or a lot of them have, which is the
but that's like property search, isn't it? Is that right? Yeah.
So that's sort of my journey from there. And then my most recent role prior to Pushfar was as head of digital for Value My Stuff, which is a tech startup that was actually on Dragon's Den.
Right, fantastic.
I met the founder, Patrick, a few years ago.
So you weren't at the pitch day for Dragon's Den then?
I wasn't. No, I joined afterwards. But
which dragon did he get some funding from them?
2. He got Deborah Mead and Antheo Pathetus both.
Oh really? Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
He did well.
They're both characters, aren't they?
They certainly seem it. So so he did well, and I then joined as head of digital there.
Right.
And
that's a great experience. It's interesting. So I suppose my question that I was going to ask you about was obviously gets to the point of leaving the education system at that age. Did that cause consternation with your friends and family, or was it just embraced? I don't know. It's really interesting.
I think it was there was certainly concern before I had the job offer. It was sort of as soon as I had a job offer and relative stability.
When they offered that £300,000 a year salary when you were 17. Yeah. Sorry, it was only $500,000. That's right. Yeah.
When they realised that actually I had a job offer and that I wasn't, going to be leaving school and doing nothing with my life. Actually, but I remember at school when I told teachers that I had decided that I wasn't going to finish my A levels, that I was going to drop out midway through. They all said, "Oh, you're mad! You've got to do this. Then you've got to go to university. If you don't, no one will hire you." And then I think it was sort of 3 or 4 weeks later, I came in and I said, "Well, I've now got a job offer." And then they said, "Oh, well, we knew you could do it.
We knew you had potential." Yeah.
Thought, no, you didn't.
Well, it's interesting. The reason I'm asking that is because my sons are 16 and 14. You see, Ben and James are 16 and 14 now. So I don't know. I'm in two minds. Do I get you to talk to them or not?
Yeah, might encourage them the wrong way, but I think for me, I just was so keen to have experience in the real world, and I think I was aware that, and maybe I was more aware because of technology and because of things like Twitter, that the when you're in education, you're sort of in a bubble, and actually don't realise to a certain extent what's going on outside that. And so I was just so keen as early on as possible to get into the real world and get working.
So you talk. Thanks for sharing your kind of those things. It's interesting to listen to your steps you've taken. I mean, obviously, one of the things that I talk about is peaks and valleys, right? So in your journey now, because obviously you're slightly younger than me, only just slightly younger. But obviously, the kind of what were the highs and the valleys that you went through? Any what were the in the time you've had since starting on that and being brave, to go out and embark on something and go you could say, be the outlier, because people don't usually do that. They don't usually leave it halfway through their A levels. They usually go down that pattern of A levels, then university, then potentially even a master's degree, then they might get a job. Yeah. Anything you want to share with the audience about that perspective, or what you've learned through that?
Yeah, I think in terms of kind of the peaks and valleys, I think the valleys, I suppose the low moments are probably once the company I was working for, Responses, once that was acquired by Oracle, I was sort of sucked into this huge organization that had so much process, and I just didn't enjoy it at all. And I was sort of at that point questioning what my next step was going to be in my career, and do I stay at Oracle or do I go somewhere else? Right. It's a great organization. There are loads of fantastic benefits to being at Oracle, but having been at a far smaller company and sort of being forced into a large company, I decided that actually I wanted to move on.
So that was that the cultural thing about what you saw as being, the working environment? Because because I suppose I don't know what there's this Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen X, and the one that's what's it called? I think my two sons are now Gen Alpha, which is 6 to 16.
Okay.
So I think you probably in the next phase on from that. I think you're probably Gen Z, are you?
Possibly. Yeah. I'm 26, so I don't know what that makes me, but yeah.
Yeah, so I talked with Jackie, one of my other guests, the other week about this, and she was saying that there's obviously different behaviour. There's this piece around how the different generations have responded to technology, and also how they have a different view on life. Yeah. Obviously, I'm generation some other number or letter, but you have your parents bring you up in a certain way, or you go down this pattern, etc., etc. It sounds like you've broken out that pattern, and yet here you are now. Running a increasingly successful tech company, which is attacking a very interesting problem for lots of people. Millions of people in the world need to have mentors. So it's it must be fascinating going through that journey.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, the thing throughout my career in the last sort of 9 years since I left school was that actually. I never stayed at I think the longest place I stayed at a company was 13 months, so just over a year. And I was always acutely aware that I never wanted to do the 9 to 5 working for someone else. It was always a kind of means to an end, but every place that I worked in gave me different experience and different insight, which I knew was valuable. And I was still working on side projects, even whilst I was working at Oracle and Zoopla and various other companies. I still had side things that I was trying and learning and getting involved with. And I've always, and I'm still to this day, I'm acutely aware that time is it sounds like a cliche, but time is such a precious resource. And if you're in a job that you're not enjoying, then just leave, just move on from it.
Well, it's a bit like Steve Jobs says, stay curious, isn't it? It's, if you don't find you keep looking until you find your passion. That's that kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And just life's too short to be in a job that you're not enjoying.
Yeah, but I think the thing is, what you're highlighting, I think I did know that thing about certain generations where the tenure of the people, people are constantly, potentially switching or trying to find that sweet spot. Whereas on the other conversely, when I was brought up, it was kind of like, I'm not saying it was the same generation, but some generations near to me was, you get a job, it's a job for life, you stay in the same company. It's that kind of thing. And yet, some of the people I worked with in the 1980s and 90s, which was quite a few years ago, GE, General Electric, the big conglomerate, they're still there today. 30 years later. So, but they're, fantastic company, great culture, really good people. Yeah, and obviously people have choices. People have choices about what they want to do, don't they? So you want to say something?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, my father he's worked at one company all his life. He's never worked anywhere else, and he's still there today. He joined on the graduate scheme, and he's still there now. So, it's certainly, there's a generational thing where people are changing jobs more often and sort of expecting more from companies, I suppose, and want to get more out of it, which I think is a good thing. I think it's good to have the approach where actually organizations are seeing fresh talent coming through the whole time, and people are moving and making way for other individuals, and trying, learning new things from each company they work in and taking that experience to other companies. I think it's a good thing for the individuals and the organizations. I think companies have a tendency to fear employee turnover, and fear individuals leaving organizations. But actually, I think there can be a great benefit to that. And I think you can.
I suppose the thing is now, as you're the CEO of a company, though, you could say you've got the ultimate accountability, right? Yeah. So, and in my view with CEOs, they have to set the vision, the mission, the strategy, the people plan, how to look after their people, and how do they make sure that they attract talent and retain talent. So I suppose that's the thing now with Pushfire, is that you actually have to be the embodiment of all the things you've learned over that time you've been already in your working life. And I suppose, I presume you're trying to curate the best bits from the kind of those experiences and put that into Pushfire.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the great one of the things I was fortunate to do was I was fortunate to be at large companies like Oracle, and then smaller startups that have 10 and 20 employees. So I've seen the kind of the range and the good and the bad from each of those companies of different sizes, and what they're doing well and what they didn't do so well. And hopefully I can, as you say, take the best bits of those and leave the rest, and take the best bits into Pushfar and what we're doing, and the people that work with us.
So what have been the peaks then so far in Pushfar's journey so far? What would be what would be the celebrate successes?
Well, the two big ones, I suppose, are closing our first funding round, and signing our first paying customer, signing our first contract. We launched Pushfar in January last year, January 2019, and we signed our first client contract in June 2019. So that's 6 months in.
Okay.
And there was a real fear for the first 6 months that we just weren't going to sign any contracts. And actually, since then, I've just realised that actually companies and organisations take a long time to sign off on things, and things have to go through procurement and IT security and everything else.
Yeah.
But I'd never been in that position where I knew that was a thing. So I was thinking,
we're
6 months in and we've not turned over any revenue at all. And then subsequently I found out from our advisory board that actually, if you're getting a contract signed in less than a year from a large company, then you're doing quite well. which would have been really reassuring to have heard in the first 6 months. But that was certainly a celebratory moment, was signing that first client.
Interesting. No, I agree. It's but then you see what you do then is you look at the pattern. There's then, I presume, you've seen the pattern now of behaviour, and as you talk to new potential organisations, then you start to see people who you believe are buying into what your vision is and what your mission is, and then people that are maybe just shopping around and seeing whether they may buy at some point, but maybe not now. So
trying to figure out why they would buy, what they're buying for, what the reasons are that they're having the conversations with you in the first place, and trying to then work out and qualify those leads, I suppose.
So this is the G&T sessions, right? So it's about growth and technology with gifted and talented people. You've already explained that you're pretty gifted and talented, because if you left school early and you're running a tech business 9 years later, that's pretty impressive, I think. So we talked about the G side a little bit, about the T side, so technology. So it sounds like you, because of I don't know how you got involved in this. Did you just fall into technology? How did that come about? Because obviously you said developing websites at 17. That's pretty, for some people that'd be pretty scary, right? But sounds like you, I don't know, maybe there's something that happened in your backstory that got you comfortable with technology. Because I think these days people are having to realise that in this new world that we're living in, technology, can be quite useful, but it's obviously has another side to it as well. But what's the story about the T in your story then? What did you just fall into it? Obviously, you're running a tech company now. You're running a software company. Every company's a software company, as Mark Andreessen said. Software's eating the world, etc., etc. Chomp chomp. So, what's your thought on
that? To a certain extent, I think I fell into it, but I when I was young, there were people around. There were sort of neighbours and family friends who were in IT, and I thought that was really cool. I remember one of our neighbours was the CTO for Sky, and he
Did you Brat?
No, this was a while ago. Called Simon Post.
So you say was what? Oh, Simon Post. I know Simon Post. Yeah, I know.
Okay. Yeah. So he lived next door to us. And
fantastic.
He has children who are the same age as me. So growing up, age sort of 6, I always used to go over there and, obviously hang out with his...
Yeah, because he used to work for Carphone Warehouse as well. He worked at Carphone Warehouse as well.
Across, yeah. And whenever I used to go over there, they always had the latest TVs and and it was always just really cool.
Lots of shiny toys. Yeah.
At the age of sort of 6 or 7, I sort of was always, I'd always come back from there going, Dad, why don't we have this or that? and it just always fascinated me, his job and what he was doing in terms of that. So that was kind of one of one of the things that drove me.
So it was the environment. It sounds like it was the environment that got you aware of this stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
you've probably seen the videos, where I see some babies, like working with look like they're 2 years old or 18 months old. They're like working an iPad. Yeah, they're doing all the finger movements on an iPad. I'm going,
yeah. Absolutely. It was definitely partly that. And then the other thing was, while I was at school, aged sort of 8 or 9, I was bullied quite a bit, and I sort of then took cover by kind of going into the IT room and just playing on the computers and things. And I was fascinated by the idea of websites. I don't know why. I just thought the idea that you can create your own website and everyone or anyone anywhere in the world can access
it. Yeah,
it's a really cool thing. And actually, so that's where I started to learn how to code websites at the age of 9.
Wow.
Which.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember this actually, because you've got some videos on YouTube, haven't you?
Yeah, we don't need to draw too much attention. But yeah.
So this is obviously going to be a more modern version of the video, but I do remember you mistakenly showed me the links to those, and I was thinking, wow, you look young.
Yeah. At the age of 12 or 13, I was posting videos teaching other people how to code.
That's the early days of YouTube, that though, isn't it? I mean, that's like 2007, something like that. Is that right?
It was before Google owned YouTube. Yeah.
Oh wow.
And I just discovered it and decided to start posting videos about how to create websites and how to use Photoshop, and built up a bit of an audience there of, I think, sort of 10,000 subscribers.
I think maybe you should dig those videos out and put them on the Pushfire YouTube channel.
I might see. I thought about that.
The Founders Playground.
Creating a new video because they're so out of date now. But at the time they were, that's how you designed websites, was on very basic text editors and hand coding.
So as a business founder, you kind of quite tech savvy, as I would call it. You kind of, because there's lots of buzzwords and lots of TLAs and FLAs, 3-letter acronyms and 4-letter acronyms in the tech world. Yeah.
Yeah.
That people, it's like this techno babble, as I would call it. Yeah. I presume it sounds like you're pretty competent in that. You know what the babble is. And
I try to be. Yeah.
You can read the binary, the ones and zeros kind of thing.
I used to think I could, and then now every time I have a conversation with Gabriel, he goes into real detail about these things, and as the CTO, that it's a good thing that he knows all of this. But I sort of there are times where
you glaze over,
where I'll nod. And that sounds good. Sounds really good.
Just nod. Keep majestic and nod.
Exactly. So but largely speaking, I'd like to think I understand what's going on. Yeah. So
in terms of your on your business G story, or your business, the G on the business side, what you talked about Pushfire, and you talked about what you're doing now in the mentoring space, which I think is a really, really fantastic area. I was talking to one of my old people HR managers the other week, who I used to work with at Tesco, and we were talking about the mentoring space, and we were talking about how some organizations embrace mentoring, and then some organizations say they're embracing mentoring, but they don't really do it, and they don't really help the employee, or the employer doesn't really help the employee. But then also there's a situation where sometimes employees need to be, I suppose you could say, unleashed, to be given the mandate to be mentored as well. Yeah. And there's that kind of self-realization that, you can work things through yourself. It may take you longer, but actually be, vulnerable enough and authentic enough to actually open yourself up and say, look, I don't know anything about this. But, I'd like to build a relationship with you. So we've got kind of like a mentoring relationship. I don't know if you've got any thoughts about that, or in some of the companies you've dealt with and some of the people you've dealt with so far, have you found that kind of thing as well?
Definitely. I think, as you say, it starts with empowering employees to feel like they can have a mentor or be a mentor. And I think one of the great things about mentoring is that it is so flexible. And actually, we all have experience. We all have things that we can give back and help other people with, as well as obviously things that we can learn. So we can, 99 times out of 100, you could be a mentor. Even if you've only got 1 year's experience, you've got a year's more experience than someone who's just come out of school or university or college. You can then be a good mentor and share your knowledge of the first year of your working life. And at the same time, anyone at any level can always learn and can always be mentored. So I think mentoring is so valuable. And one of the things that I kind of talk about is how we learn. And a lot of the time we learn from failure. We learn from our mistakes. And actually, if you can learn from the mistakes of others and not just the mistakes that you've made yourself, that puts you in such a strong position because you're going to go further.
Yeah, accelerates you your learning. Yeah.
Hence the name Pushfar. So actually, I think everyone can benefit from being a mentor and or being mentored and doing both in most cases. It's then just about ensuring that companies enable mentoring to happen and make it accessible. And one of the things that we find is that organizations will often limit mentoring to sort of top talent or people in certain
high potentials, high pots.
Yeah, certain groups. But actually, when we start to dive into why they do that, it usually comes down to a resource thing. Is that we don't have the resource to offer mentoring to everyone. And of course, you ask why, and they say, well, because our Excel spreadsheet's already got 500 people in it. And so we then say,
but what you're talking about is how do you democratize? And it's mentoring for the masses. It's mentoring for everybody. Shouldn't be an exclusive little club.
Exactly.
It should be for everybody.
We all should be able to access mentoring, and we should all be able to benefit from experience of others and also share our experience with other people too. I think if everyone...
I don't know if you've heard that quote. I just think it's a great quote that Daniel Priestley uses, the guy that wrote the Key Person of Influence and 24 Assets books. He talks about people don't realize that they're stood on what's called a mountain of value. Yeah. They're stood on the mountain and looking out across the mountain of value, and they have lots of experiences, lots of stories, lots of journeys, lots of things that they've done. They don't realize because they're so close to their own life. They never get a chance to step back and say, my God, I didn't realize I knew that, I knew this. And when you start to get into that mentoring discussion, it triggers things in your backstory.
Yeah.
That's what we should do there, or that's what we'd advise. And I suppose that's the thing that I found with people I spoke to about this is it's having those conversations and having permission to have those kind of conversations and having the time to have those conversations can be incredibly valuable for both the mentor and the mentee.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things people often think about when they think about mentoring is there's obviously clear benefits to being mentored, but people often are unaware of how beneficial it is being a mentor and how much you get out of being a mentor. And like you just said, actually, it reinforces best practice and it reinforces the things you already know. When you mentor someone and you talk about how individuals might approach certain challenges that they're facing, actually it can then reinforce what you
it reinforces your learning, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it can improve interpersonal skills. It can really help you to learn as well a lot. So it's definitely a two-way street.
Yeah, it's double benefit. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So back on your dreams, if we're talking about, we're now in 2020, we're now in the new decade, right? Obviously 2020 as a year has been a pretty abysmal year so far, in terms of number of different dimensions.
Yeah.
Obviously everybody was looking towards to the second half of the year, and hopefully we're going to see an increase in it, or a switch in the prosperity and the livelihoods of lots of people and the health of lots of people.
Yeah.
What are you seeing? Are you seeing that mentoring is an important element? Are you seeing that what you're talking about, the stories and the thing where you're helping people, is that going to increase, or are you seeing kind of people putting it on hold, or just saying, oh, maybe next year, or is it, what's your view on that?
We've, on both for individuals looking at mentoring and organizations looking at mentoring, we've seen a huge increase.
Right.
And that's understandable. I think now with the pandemic and people having the time to think about where they want to be and what they want to do, and realizing they need a bit more of a sense of direction, they're looking at mentoring more, which is the right thing to be doing. And for organizations, they're suddenly realizing that actually they need to be offering their employees the support through as many channels as possible. And mentoring is a great channel for doing so.
Mm.
So I think mentoring is becoming more and more important every day, and will continue to do so.
So you're saying it's getting more strategic, because it's, I think the thing is that, I don't know if this is changing. Is it switching from just being the agenda of the chief people officer, the HR director, the HR manager? Is it switching to be more of a board issue? Are you seeing other stakeholders and like the CEO getting involved, et cetera, other functional directors, or is it, who's owning it? Who's been the you could say the torch bearer, who's got the torch and the fiery torch, saying we must do this, it's important, people are our greatest asset, all that kind of stuff. Let's actually do something to help them out.
I mean, it's still typically HR and learning and development managers, but what we do see now is that they're particularly at the moment, they are being given so much more responsibility, so much more power, and so much more control as a result of this, because not just with mentoring, but in general, CEOs and chief operating officers realize that actually people are the biggest asset. So therefore, who's looking after people? It's the HR team. So therefore, they have that additional responsibility that they've always had, but it's more important, and they're then making everyone else in the business more aware of the benefits of mentoring. So HR already know the benefits of mentoring, but actually they're spreading the awareness of that right up to the top of the chain.
So it's interesting, because the thing I was going to say to you was there's an interesting phrase that I got from one of my other guests that's going to be, his episode is going to be published very soon. He's one of my good friends who work for Amazon, a guy called Alejandro Cananero, and he said that they have a what they call a say-do ratio. Yeah. So what they do is they have people who talk a lot and say a lot of things, and then they don't do much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so the thing about this, I suppose what you're saying is that the say-do ratio is changing. So previously people would talk a lot about mentoring, or about people are our greatest asset, but actually they would do not a lot about it. They wouldn't do much about it. So the balance is, they would say a lot but not do as much. But then you're saying that now the say-do ratio is maybe balancing out, or it's maybe increasing where they're saying little but they're actually getting on with it. Is that fair assessment, or is it still kind of in transition?
I think it's still in transition, but I think the say-do ratio is increasing, because with our technology, it's easier to actually do. I think before, when organizations were talking a lot about mentoring but not doing it as much, it wasn't because they didn't want to, it's because they just couldn't. If you've got a larger organization like Amazon that's got, I don't know how many employees Amazon has, but hundreds of thousands, actually trying to match them all up with relevant mentors and mentees, trying to track that, trying to keep them engaged, trying to spread awareness about mentoring. It is a logistical nightmare. It's pretty much.
Oh no, I mean, he didn't. I mean, he's not. Obviously, he hasn't explained to me how they do mentoring in Amazon. What he was saying was about the. So what you're saying is the mandate. It sounds like the mandate has been changed, and the mandate for the people that are stakeholders that could help to sponsor and enable a mentoring initiative, a mentoring being, kind of built into the business. Yeah.
Yeah.
For it to be a strategic HR and people agenda item, people plan agenda item. Sounds like that's starting to change in the first half of this year.
Yeah, definitely. That's certainly what we're seeing.
And you've seen that across sector. You've seen that in kind of public sector and also commercial sectors. You've seen it. Is it any particular sector that you're seeing are becoming more engaged around it, or is it just generally everybody?
Generally everyone, which is what's great. We are at the moment presenting PushFar to such a diverse mix of organizations, everything from education and charity sector through to retailers, through to financial services organizations and tech companies, through to public service, public sector,
government
organizations. It really is everyone, which is great.
I mean, it sounds it's all about, sometimes it's all about timing. Sometimes you can be too early for a market, sometimes you can be too late for a market. Sounds like you've got an opportunity. So I suppose from setting the kind of what I would call big, hairy, audacious goals. So we're in 2010. Not 2010, we're in 2010. We're in 2020 now, aren't we? So what would be the 10-year plan? What's the 5-year plan, the 10-year plan for PushFar? How many people would you like to impact with your with the Pushfar family, or familia, the Pushfar family, how many people you like to touch?
I mean,
not touch in an inappropriate way, but touch obviously from an impact point of view.
From an impact point of view, honestly, as many people as we can around the world. Mentoring is applicable to everyone. It's beneficial to everyone. Even if you've retired, you can be an incredible mentor, and you've then got so much experience that you can share. So actually, from a very young age through to I was going
to ask you because I need to be mentored on my golf handicap, right?
Right.
And I also need to be mentored on playing guitar and also singing. Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe I need to do a search on your platform to see if I can find a guitar singing golfer. Yeah.
Possibly.
Maybe the characteristics. So like, can it be a scratch golfer, play like Jimi Hendrix, and sing like David Lee Roth? Maybe that's.
I mean, we are more focused on career mentoring, but you can, if you want a career in golf, then give it a try. Have a look, see who's out there.
You can do whatever you want these days, can't you? I think there's no rules.
That's true, exactly.
Maybe each have those special drop-down lists. You see, do you want to be do you want to sing on stage at Hammersmith Apollo or something like that? Or the O2.
You can, on your Pushfar profile, you can set what your end goal is, and that can be anything you want. So if that's your end goal, Andrew, then list that publicly and proudly.
Maybe I need my own edition. Yeah. The Turner edition, yeah, or the G&T Sessions edition of Pushfar, yeah.
Absolutely.
So in terms of tech predictions, I mean, so obviously it sounds like you are fairly tech savvy. Well, apart from when you have this conversation with Gabriel, and obviously, you kind of go, yeah, that's a great topic, yeah, great magic.
Yeah.
So yeah, when do we get it? When is the release coming out so I can market it? So on the predictions, I mean, the thing I find amazing about tech these days is that, in a nanosecond, the whole world knows about something. Yeah. Mm. So you can tweet something, you can, Snapchat it, you can TikTok it. I was talking to my friend, one of my friends who was on one of my other guests the other week, and we were talking about TikTok. And he was telling me how his daughter was blowing up on TikTok, like 1.8 million views on TikTok for one video. So it's quite amazing. What's your view on the future of tech then? Any kind of predictions, or do you feel good about the future of tech? Have you got any concerns?
I think largely speaking, I feel good about it. I think one of the things that I've always taken the opinion of with tech is tech should almost be, you shouldn't notice that it's technology.
Right.
If it's a bit like the best adverts, adverts you don't really realize are adverts. I think that the same applies to technology. And I think to a certain extent, in the last couple of years, there have been various cases where people have sort of stepped back slightly from the social media side of things. And I think partly because of mental health awareness and things. Which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I think.
You mean like the likes and the dopamine from likes and stuff like that, and then the Cambridge Analytica situation, and there's been some kind of highly publicised cases that you could say is tech for good, kind of this thing about what's really going on, etc.
Exactly, and I think it's a good thing that the consumer now knows, largely speaking, what data companies have on them and how the data is being handled and everything. I think that's a really good thing. I think there's more transparency there. And I think in terms of the future, I think people are now starting to become more savvy about what they want to sign up for and what they want to commit to and how they get involved and how they use technology responsibly as individuals, and also how organizations can use it responsibly. And as you say, tech for good. Yeah. I think that will continue to happen. I think, and I think
it's a bit like the thing that Google used to have, this thing, don't be evil. Yeah. They now obviously modified that. I think they don't say don't be evil anymore. I don't know what that means.
No, I don't think that's their motto anymore. But but I think largely speaking, it's a good thing. I think consumers now understand what's going on a lot more with their data and with their privacy, and have more control. And I think that's a really good thing. I think that will just continue to be the case, and I'd like to think we've probably found a happy medium in terms of technology and people now. I think one of the interesting things that will one of those things that will be interesting to see after the pandemic, disappears and lockdowns lifted around the world and people start to get back to a sense of normality, is how individuals then interact with technology after that. And it could be that it might go the other way and people use technology less because actually they realize how much they've missed human interaction and human contact. People might think, God, I don't want another Zoom conversation. Or it might go the other way and people might want more Zoom conversations. It's a hard one to call. I don't know. I think we'll see. Time will tell. But
I was laughing. I had a call with one of my very good friends this morning. Who was in the telco industry, and we were saying, is it Microsoft Teams? Is it Zoom? Is it Skype? Is it WhatsApp? Is it? Just the choices these days. Amazon have got their own one called Chime, which I was using the other week. Amazon Chime, which is their version of Zoom. Right. So it's mind blowing, isn't it? It's mind boggling because you start having a conversation on Zoom. They go, or on WhatsApp. They go, oh, can we jump onto Zoom? And then I go, okay, well, actually, Zoom's not working that well. Can we jump onto Skype? And I'm going, can we go back to carrier pigeon, please? Yeah. So it's a bit weird, isn't it? So I suppose one of my final questions I was going to ask you about was about this whole thing about growth, and it sounds like you found a really interesting problem to solve in the world, which makes it very worthwhile, and obviously it sounds like you're very passionate about that, and you've had a personal experience where you saw the problem, and what you're doing is looking at how you can solve that problem for lots of other people and have a big impact in the world, which is great. I suppose in the terms of giving some takeaway advice to people who are founders or co-founders, in the time that you've been through your journey so far, what would be the kind of takeaways or thoughts you want to share with them about a bit like you sat here as being a mentor, saying to your younger self, what would you have said to your 17-year-old Ed again that you know now?
I think the first thing is always spend your money or the investor's money really, really wisely. I think it's so easy, particularly if it's investors' money, to burn through it really quickly. And that happens quite a lot of the time. There are startups out there that haven't really worked out what their revenue streams are and what their financial model really looks like because they haven't tested it for long enough, and they've pivoted and they've spent a lot of money and not realized actually that their runway has gone from being 12 months to 2 months. Yeah. And then they have to close. So spend the money really wisely. Always make sure
you sound like a finance director. Then you sound like an accountant.
But I think that's important to do that. I think it's important to be like that because I think there's a mindset that with some founders that they will spend a lot of money and that they'll leave it up to other people to tell them not to spend money. And actually, I think your job as a CEO has to be to keep an eye on, business has got to make money, right? Otherwise, it's not business. It's certainly not smart business if it's
It could be not for profit.
It could be, yeah, absolutely.
It could be charity. Pushfar Foundation,
But even as a charity or a non-profit, you still need to be able to pay your staff, and you still need to have
what you're saying is you need to balance the books. Exactly.
Definitely, yeah, absolutely. And I think if you have a long runway as well, it gives you the opportunity to try things and test them and work out what works and what doesn't. Without feeling there's a rush to get things tried and tested before you run out of money. So you can really focus on actually developing the right products and developing the right approach to your clients or prospective clients, and working out who your prospective clients are and why they're buying your product in the first place. So yeah, I would say spending.
Why do you think that is though? Is that raising an education issue about how people are taught about financial acumen and all that kind of stuff? Is that because some people come through a certain track, they have a different backstory to maybe you, and they suddenly get into this situation where they get funding, and they maybe have the superpowers in a certain area, but obviously maybe financial acumen is not one of them. But is it a symptom of the education system? What's your view on that?
I think it's partly the education system. I think it's also partly the media and the media hype around startups and stories that are breaking every day about X, Y, and Z company having raised X £100 million,
a gazillion, billions, trillion,
and
zillion,
are yet to make profit or generate revenue even. And you only have to watch films like The Social Network to realize that they were getting a lot of money and they didn't even have a revenue stream to begin with. And I think that then has become the mindset of a lot of young entrepreneurs,
right,
in general, which I think is a really dangerous one to get into. The number of startups out there that say, "Oh, we'll generate revenue from advertising longer term, or we'll do X, Y, and Z," and actually, it's really difficult to do that. And so I think it's education and media probably that have fueled that approach to startups and that approach to entrepreneurship.
So financial acumen, you said, is a top item. Any other thoughts?
I think always listening to your consumers and always being really close to the product and using the product and using it every day if you can, and making the time to talk to people. I speak every day to people on Pushfar, as to my
7 days a week, or
I'm on Pushfar 7 days a week as a user, as a member of the community, and I mentor people myself, and I'm mentored by people on Pushfar, and I encourage other people in our team to do the same thing. And then a couple of weeks ago, Sam, who's our marketing manager, spoke with, I think, 24 or 25 different people. He spent 2 days just talking to people and getting their feedback and getting their thoughts and getting them involved and getting them to be advocates of the platform. And it's always about listening to what they want, and responding quickly to what they want as well.
What they want or what they need?
Both, I think. But primarily what
then you got the situation where Steve Jobs says, "Ignore the customer, just do what we should do." And it's like, so it's always this thing about how much voice of the customer do you listen to? But yeah, I understand what you say. Yeah.
I think I would say a lot, probably. And there are always going to be cases where the customer's not always right, but you still need to listen to them. You still need to. But it's not just about listening to one, it's about listening to lots of them, which is why, as I say, Sam, my marketing manager, was on a call with 24, was on 24 calls with 24.
Yeah, because you can find a pattern then, basically, can't you? So it's back to you probably, I don't know if you've read the book, but Steve Blank, was it three steps or 4 steps to the epiphany? He basically uses this phrase called "get out of the office" and talk to customers and understand what their problems, the problems you need to solve. Yeah, can you solve their problems?
Yeah.
But obviously, getting out of the office is a bit difficult because all the offices are empty at the moment. But getting on Zoom, so it should be the new version. Getting on Zoom, getting
exactly. And then I think the third thing I would say is realize. Well, I suppose it comes back to mentoring. Find mentors, find advisors, find people who are experts in the areas that you are not and that you don't have the experience in, and learn from them. And it's one of the first things that we did was I realized that I do not have a background in HR. I do not have a background in learning and development. I needed to know more about our target audience. So we put together an advisory board made up of HR directors and learning and development managers and people who ultimately we're selling to, or they're our target market, and we meet every couple of months. And I the last advisory board meeting that we had only last week, one of the questions I asked was, what happens if someone's made redundant? What is the process that happens in an organization? Because I have no idea. And it was really interesting, and it's good to understand and recognize the areas that you don't have experience in and the areas that you're not an expert in that you need to understand to build a business. So put advisors in place, put mentors in place, recognize where those experts are and really listen to them frequently and check in with them frequently.
That's good. So so finance customer and mentor, have a tribe of mentors or a board of mentors for yourself as well. No, I think they're good points. I think because and they're all things that people should think about when they're putting their venture together, when they want to scale their idea. So that's fantastic. So thank you so much for coming on the show today, Ed. It's been good to see you, and I do like the background, by the way. I didn't mention the background, but there's no getting away from which company you co-founded and running.
There we go.
So that was Ed Johnson, co-founder and CEO of PushFar, and this is Andrew Turner, host and founder actually of the G&C Sessions podcast. And that was a great episode, Ed. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Andrew. No, brilliant to be part of it.
And we'll catch up soon. Take care.